Hi there, you guys. The purpose of this video is to go over this assignment that I didn't have time to cover with you in class on Friday, explaining how to go about, first of all, doing the research, finding your news reports for this project. You've already started a little bit of your research, I hope, by finding these several sources, at least 3, of objective information about your topic. Right, and these are the kinds of places that you need to go in order to find those kinds of sources. And as I explained previously when I was talking about this, the reason you need to do this as a first step is that you need to learn what the facts are about your story so that you can assess how these other organizations have covered it. All right, if you know what's true about your story, then you can identify the different strategies that these different news reports take to framing your story, to presenting it in a particular way, for a particular purpose, for a particular audience. All right, so that's the purpose of this first stage of research. Right, and then after you've done that, and by the way, these 2 of these you were asked to write source reports on. But after you've gathered your basic facts about your story, then the next step is to find the reports that you're going to analyze. Okay, you're going to use this information to analyze the reports you find in each of these 5 categories, right? Starting with one video clip from a major non-cable news channel. All right, and in the assignment sheet, there's a bit more detail. It gives some examples on page 3, right, of non-cable news networks. These are those: ABC, NBC, CBS, and PBS. All right, so one way to go about finding those is to just use Google. And as you can see here, I searched coronavirus. And one strategy I can use is just to search my topic and then use Google's categories in order to find the reports on that particular topic. You can go to news, right? And you know, these are the major news organizations that have published stories on this topic. There's NPR, and then there's the BBC, which I said you can find for objective information. But this is about the UK, so we want to stay focused on what's going on in the US. The purpose of this assignment is to have you guys analyze the US news media, the American news media, because of the particular job that the American news media has to do in protecting the health and functionality of our democracy. All right, so that's what we're analyzing. There's Fox News, that's cable news. But as I said before, we're looking for non-cable news networks, major ones. So I don't see any of these in these results automatically. So what I can do next is I can just type some in. NBC, right? And this is a local NBC affiliate out of Chicago. All right, but what happens in Chicago impacts on the rest of the country. So this might be a legitimate source for your purposes of finding a report from a major non-cable news network on your story. All right, and this is Bay Area, that's local, okay? But you can see if it has national relevancy. Cuomo ditches quarantine. Now, what was going on in New York when this, in January and February and March and April, when this virus really started to take a hold in the US, was very, very important. It had national relevancy, what was happening in New York, because they were really on the front lines. And it was just a matter of time before we started to experience the kinds of challenges that they were experiencing in New York with managing this disease. All right, so right now what I'm talking about is the difference between local and national news. Okay, you can also go to videos because as the instructions say, you need to pick a video from this category. There's NBC News, that's about what's going on in Europe. And if they compare what's going on in Europe to the US, then that could work. This is a 2-minute and 37-second video clip, which is really the shortest video clip that you should select 4 minutes and 20 seconds, that's a better one. Okay, that's a better length for the video clip you need to pick for this project, because you want a video clip that's long enough, that has enough stuff in it for you to analyze. All right, here's a 3-minute video clip from NBC News. All right, this one is, again, Chicago, but it might have national relevancy. Region 6 mitigates. So you could look at that one. I don't know how long it is. You have to click in to see. But this one is 3 minutes and 23 seconds. Okay, and this looks like the national NBC News outlet versus a local one. All right, so then once you find your video clip, then you click in there and you watch it, and you might have to watch a few to find one that you want to use. I'm going to continue without supporting NBC. You guys have enough money. Okay, anyways, so here's the video clip, and you play it, and while you're watching it, take notes about what you hear. Okay, what aspects of the story do they touch on, and how do they frame them? All right, so that's the basics on searching for your reports. We just found one. We just found one report from this category. All right, and then you move on to the next one. Once you find one that you like from this category, you move on to the next one and find a cable news report, okay, a video broadcast. And then find a newspaper article, a major online news magazine like these. This is not an exhaustive list. There are a bunch that are not on this list, okay? But you'll be able to find this, your story having been covered in these, and then others. And if you have any doubt about whether or not a news magazine that you found covering your story is major enough, you can email me about that. But as English 2 students, one of the things you're going to be doing is assessing the credibility and scope of these news organizations that you're looking at, okay, to make your own determination about whether or not they're, quote, major, unquote, or, quote, national. All right, but again, if you have any doubts, you can email me. And then a major national newspaper, okay, and these 4 are the major national ones now. There used to be more, but they're going out of business. We'll talk more about that later. All right, and in their place are springing up hundreds of these fringe, partisan, alternative news websites are taking the place of traditional news media to a large extent. And that's creating a problem because they do not operate with the same set of journalistic codes and criteria that these other traditional news media organizations operate with. They're almost all opinion. They're all biased, okay? All right, we said before, Breitbart is a conservative news organization. All right, Daily Kos is a liberal, maybe even progressive news organization. So is Common Dreams. The Drudge Report is conservative. All right, and increasingly people are relying on these for their news and information. These and social media, and those are both problems. Okay, so you'll end up with 5, one from each of these categories after you're done with your research. And you can just type in your topic to Google and type in the name of an organization if you don't find the stuff from just that you want from just typing in the topic that you're researching. Okay, let me close that. All right, so we've done step 1 and 2. You've chosen your topic and got it approved, and you've done your initial fact-based research. Okay, and we just talked about finding the reports, the 5 reports that you're going to analyze most closely. You're going to use those other sources to help you analyze these. All right, let me do a little demonstration of how to go about doing your analysis. And again, here are some samples that you can look at of previous students having done this assignment. All right, but let me show you an example. I used the Trayvon Martin case here, which happened in 2013. And just real briefly, for those of you who aren't familiar with what happened to Trayvon Martin, This is I think he was 19 at the time that he was killed by George Zimmerman in the state of Florida. Trayvon Martin had been walking home from a convenience store with some snacks to his dad's house in a neighborhood in Florida. I can't remember which neighborhood it was. But this man, George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin, a young 19-year-old black male, George Zimmerman saw Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman, who's non-black, saw Trayvon Martin walking in that neighborhood and followed him in his car. George Zimmerman had appointed himself a neighborhood watchman. He wasn't part of any official neighborhood watch organization, but he had just decided that he was going to patrol the neighborhood. So he saw Martin walking home. It was drizzling. Martin had a hoodie on. His hood was up. And George Zimmerman started to follow him in his car. Okay, while in his car, Zimmerman called the police and said, "Hey, I'm following this suspicious-looking person." And the police told him to leave it alone, that they would come and check it out. But Zimmerman didn't do that. He continued to follow Martin. And in fact, parked and got out of his car and started to follow Martin on foot. And then there was a struggle between them. Once Martin realized he was being followed by an older, bigger man, he turned to confront him and they struggled. And then Zimmerman shot Martin. All right. And so those are the basic facts of what happened. And remember, I told you you needed to find that out about your story. You need to find out the basic facts and then make notes about those. And that's one of the things you're asked to do in this assignment for your story. All right, so I just summarized the basic facts for you. Right, and then next thing you need to do is identify the context and the related issues, the issues that relate, okay, to your particular story. All right, let's see. And these are some issues that relate to the story of what happened to Trayvon Martin. Racial profiling is an issue that relates to that story. Because why, arguably, did Zimmerman decide to follow Martin? Arguably, Zimmerman decided to follow Martin because of racial profiling, because of the way in which certain people profile young men of color, okay, as likelier to be guilty of some sort of crime, either having committed or planning to commit a crime. That's called racial profiling, in which law enforcement entities or even individuals target people. And this is something that applies in our society to young men of color. They are more targeted than young men who are white, okay, by law enforcement or people who are looking for somebody who they think might be planning or having committed a crime. All right, and then systemic racism in the whole criminal justice system pertains to this story and its facts, because Zimmerman wasn't even arrested initially by the police. He killed someone with a gun, and he did not even go to jail initially until there was a public outcry. Then the cops went and arrested him. But the cops came to the scene, they saw Zimmerman had a gun, and they just let him go. Well, this kid, Trayvon Martin, was dead on the ground. All right. So this law right here, stand your ground, is one of the excuses given for why Zimmerman was not initially arrested, right? And it's also the basis for his acquittal. Once he was arrested and tried for having killed Martin, he was acquitted because he was able to argue, as is the law in the state of Florida, that he legitimately felt himself to be under threat and needed to protect himself with deadly force. And in Florida, you get to, quote, stand your ground. Okay, that's the gun law in Florida for people who are allowed to carry guns in Florida. And what that means is you don't have to take an avenue of escape. Okay, you can stand your ground and defend yourself. In other states, like the state of California, you are only allowed to use deadly force if you have no safe avenue of retreat. If you feel your life is in danger and you can't run away, okay, that's the only time you can use deadly force to defend yourself legally. But in Florida, You can use deadly force to defend yourself legally, even if it would be possible for you to escape. You are not required to. You can kill somebody with a gun in Florida. Understand your ground. So whether or not that should be the law in Florida is a legitimate debate for people to be having as it relates to this thing that happened. All right, so this is a list of issues that I made that are relevant to discuss in news media coverage of this story. The news is not required to only report the facts of what happened. They need to report the facts, right? And not speculation or opinion only about what happened. But in addition to that, the news media is a place where we need to be having debates about these issues. And issues like this that pertain, okay, to your story. If you picked coronavirus, all right, access to healthcare is an issue that relates to what's happening in this country because of that virus, the pandemic. Okay, that is an issue that we need to figure out and have debates about in this country. So news reports that are focusing on that as an aspect of the issue, right, are legitimate. It just matters how they approach it, whether they approach it from, you know, an objective perspective where they're inviting people on equally to give their views on what should happen with healthcare in our country or not. All right, but the point is you need to make a list of issues like this about your story. These are the kinds of things that are going to be elemental, either explicitly or implicitly on the reports that you can find on your topic. All right. And this says more about that. This says more about all of that stuff, which you can read for yourself. Okay, but these are the questions I'm asking, and that citizens should be asking about what happened in that situation with the killing of Trayvon Martin. All right, and here's some general questions for analysis to keep in mind. What are the facts and opinions salient to the debate, meaning they matter, right? They're not just being brought in to obfuscate or distract from what the real issues are. To what extent can you find substantive versus superficial or obfuscating discussion of those issues? Do they get deep into it, right? Or are they just skating over the surface or sensationalizing, or you know, being deliberately confusing about the issues? And then to what extent is serious discourse taking place, right? Reason versus sensationalism, mining salacious, contentious, outrageous, alarming, disturbing, scary elements to advance a viewpoint or boost ratings. And this is what you constantly want to be thinking about. You want to be noticing the framing strategies and then thinking about why. What is their purpose? Okay, how do they benefit the news organization, these framing strategies? Do they help them either push a political viewpoint and or boost their ratings so that they can make more money? All right. Yeah. And these are more tips and places you can go to check facts. Okay, so that's that basic assignment. All righty. Let me do another demonstration for you here. All righty. Okay, so here's another topic. This is a topic that I developed some years ago, and I'll give you some context for it. The topic is war on women, okay? And that's in quotes because it's a slogan. It's a slogan devised by Democrats, people on the left, to characterize a set of policies that were coming from Republicans in the states and at the federal level, right? That were intended to limit access to reproductive health care, primarily abortions, but also contraception. And this one happens to be about contraception. All right. But this title right here is itself framing. This is a way of presenting those issues, the legislation being passed at the state and federal level intended to restrict a woman's access to reproductive health care, like contraception. All right, the Democrats decided to call that a war on women, and that's framing. Okay, rather than just talking about these things objectively, right? Like in the state of Virginia, the legislature passed this law restricting access to contraception, and the governor signed it, right? Those are just facts about what happened. But the Democrats wanted to frame legislation like that. So they did that by calling it a war on women. You know, and if you're a woman and you hear there's a war on you, right, you're going to react defensively. Okay? So this is a pathos appeal to the target audience for Democrats, right? Which is, you know, left-leaning women primarily, but also conservative women. If you're a woman, you don't want a war on you, right? A war is a sustained violent attack. That's what a war is. So here the Democrats are accusing Republicans of doing that to women, waging a war on them. All right, and this was, like I said, an attempt on their part to frame a bunch of legislation. In particular, this story, though, is about the Affordable Care Act and a provision in it that employers must provide coverage for contraception to their employees. They must. It is required by the Affordable Care Act, mandated that they do that. And there are certain employers who didn't like that. They didn't want to be required by the federal government to cover contraception for all of their employees. Okay. For example, in the case of this young woman, Sandra Fluke, who was a graduate student at Georgetown University, which is a Catholic institution, okay, she was saying that she needs this. And because Georgetown University is a Catholic institution, but is also an employer that employs graduate students and pays them a wage and provides them with health insurance, right? They felt as though this provision of the Affordable Care Act was imposing on their religious freedom, okay? That they have anti-contraception religious beliefs, that provision of the Affordable Care Act would require them to violate, go against their beliefs. And the Constitution protects religion on that basis. All right, so this is a legitimate constitutional argument that needs to be had. We need to weigh, as we do with many, many issues in this country, right? The rights of groups and individuals against the rights of different groups and individuals. We're constantly trying to balance those things. Individual rights with the greater good, right? And some groups' rights with other groups' rights, where they overlap. All right, we need to try to balance that, and it's constant. It's an ongoing project. All right, but this particular story that I'm going to use as an example was set off when this young woman, Sandra Fluke, wanted to testify before a House committee hearing on this issue. And at that time, Republicans were in charge of the House of Representatives. And so they got to invite the people that they wanted to invite to discuss this issue. And they were really, you know, all of these things were really aimed at dismantling the Affordable Care Act, taking it apart, because they didn't like it. So they invited only male religious leaders to come and testify in front of this House committee on whether or not that provision of the Affordable Care Act is constitutional. And so the Democrats in the House objected that, you know, a woman who arguably has a stake in this issue was not allowed to testify, and that only religious leaders were heard. Okay, and by the way, all of whom are male, who, whether or not, in case you didn't know, they don't have babies. All right, so this story got picked up by the news media and framed in a variety of ways for a few different purposes. I said before, you need to make a list of issues, the things you would want to see being covered by news reports on your story. All right, and here's my list of issues that relate. Access to contraception. Is there a real need for the ACA to cover it, or is it readily affordable? Because if it is, then there's no need to impose on the religious freedom of other people. Okay, if women can just get it, this is part of the balancing act we need to do in our society and in our politics. If women can get it, and it's no skin off their teeth to get it, then you don't have to impose on someone. Nobody has to give anything up of their rights in order to accommodate the needs of others. All right, so that's a question that I would hope that reports on this story would inform me about. I need to know that. How available is it? Women's health and healthcare issues and policies that affect them. This would be something relevant for news reports on this story to be discussing, and that I would want to learn more about or be able to from those reports. The economic welfare of women and children, right? How much of a problem is it for women to not have easy access to contraception and have that covered? How does it impact them economically? How does it impact the lives of their children from an economic perspective? That would be something for these news reports to be discussing. And then the religious rights and freedom that the Constitution protects, what are they? And the degree to which the ACA infringes on those freedoms. Okay, I need information about that. I need to know how much of an imposition is it, right? So that I can decide, okay, what am I going to support? All right, and I'm going to be watching for the framing strategies that are always being employed in every news report. Every news report uses framing strategies. They have to, okay? They have to. Certain keywords, language, we looked at that in learning to recognize political viewpoints exercise. Stock phrases, stereotypes, fallacies, headlines, all of these things we've been talking about, right? And then what purpose? Is it sensationalizing the story to increase viewership? Or are they trying to push a political viewpoint, or both? Okay, here's an example of a news report I found on this story. And this gives you an overview. This is from CNN, a cable news network, a video clip. Right, this gives you an overview of the topic, which I've just summarized for you, but this will give you an overview too of the topic. Okay, let me make sure I'm optimized to share with you. Share a video. Yes, I am. Okay, here we go. We'll watch it and then I'll talk about it.
Now to that huge firestorm developing after Rush Limbaugh's controversial comments on his radio show about a Georgetown student in the center of the battle over contraception and religious rights. ABC's Jake Tapper is here with this story. And Jake, this is really heating up. Good morning.
Good morning, Robin. So much of politics is about framing. Is this a debate about contraception? Is it a debate about religious liberty? Or is it a debate about a talk radio giant insulting a third-year law student?
For 2 days, Rush Limbaugh has eviscerated Sandra Fluke on the radio.
What does it say about the college co-ed Susan Fluke, who goes before a congressional committee and essentially says that she must be paid to have sex? What does that make her? It makes her a slut, right? Makes her a prostitute. She wants to be paid to have sex.
Fluke, a third-year law student at Georgetown, is now the flashpoint in a debate about whether employers should be required to fully cover contraception even if they have religious objections. Fluke had been prevented from testifying by Republican Congressman Darrell Issa at this congressional hearing in mid-February. 2 congresswomen even walked out of the hearing after only men testified. But last week, Fluke was back before Congress, this time speaking at an unofficial hearing held by Democrats.
Without insurance coverage, contraception, as you know, can cost a woman over $3,000 during law school. For a lot of students who, like me, are on public interest scholarships, that's practically an entire summer's salary.
Those comments set off the talk radio giant on Wednesday.
She's having so much sex she can't afford the contraception. She wants you and me and the taxpayers to pay her to have sex. What does that make us? We're the pimps.
And again on Thursday.
If we're going to have to pay for this, then we want something in return. Ms. Fluke, and that would be the videos of all this sex posted online so we can see what we are getting for our money.
Overnight, Fluke responded on MSNBC.
I guess my reaction is what the reaction that a lot of women have when they've been called these names. Initially, you're stunned, but then very quickly you're outraged, because this is historically the kind of language that is used to silence women.
House Democrats are seizing on this issue, asking House Speaker John Boehner, a Republican, to condemn Limbaugh's remarks. Robin?
All right, Jake, thanks very much.
Okay. All right. So the clip opens up by Jake Tapper saying, "Is this a story about framing, or is it a story about, you know, this Georgetown law student and Rush Limbaugh insulting her?" Right? And you know, that particular news report was about the second thing. It was about the second thing. And, you know, we could learn very little of the list of things that I wanted to learn about this particular story, right? When the young woman, Sandra Fluke, is speaking, right, she does talk about the relative affordability, right, for her of contraception. Which is something that Rush Limbaugh seems to not understand. I mean, aside from the fact that he's just outrageous, and on purpose, you guys, he is purposely outrageous. That's how he makes his money. Okay, and so you might wonder why CNN would play so much sound of him being outrageous. You know, and hopefully it's clear to you that the reason CNN focused on that particular aspect of this story is because it's sensational, right? That's going to increase viewership. It's like the reality TV-ification of the news media. Okay, when people, you know, yell at each other, or, you know, engage in sort of salacious framing like Rush Limbaugh was doing, referring to her as a prostitute, saying that he wanted to see the tape. I mean, his audience is going to laugh at that. So he's doing it for them. But it doesn't get us any closer to an understanding of this issue. And so, you know, I have a problem with CNN framing their story that way, framing their coverage that way. I could learn very little about it from that report. And I feel like I just wasted my time watching it. Okay, but it does give you an overview of the topic. And then here's our favorite, O'Reilly, covering the story. And then here's the Ed Show on MSNBC. So I said MSNBC is like the counterpart to Fox News. Here's the Daily Beast. This is an online news magazine. This is another online news magazine, a conservative one. And there's Michelle Malkin. There she is again. All right. She's calling it a war on conservative women. So you can tell just from the title what her framing of this is going to be, that really it's conservative women who are under attack. And then there's ABC News, a major non-cable news network, and there's another one. So I found all of these reports just by Googling, like I showed you before. All right, and I found 7 of them. You need to find 5. Okay, but let's look at O'Reilly here. All righty, and I'm going to take notes while I listen. Okay. And you should too, when you're listening to your report.
Tonight. Who is running Sandra Fluke? That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. As we reported last night, the Factor believes the Sandra Fluke contraception controversy was manufactured to divert attention away from the Obama administration's disastrous decision to force Catholic nonprofit organizations to provide insurance coverage for birth control and the morning after pill. That might very well be unconstitutional. Anyway, we are having trouble tracking down just who is sending Sandra around to the media. It's very strange. So far, the 30-year-old activist has appeared on 8 national news programs where she was not challenged at all. Last week, we called Sandra on her cell phone and invited her on The Factor. She didn't call back. Very unusual. There was no other public contact for the woman, just her cell phone. A man named Mike has booked her on a few programs, but we can't even get his last name. And Mike doesn't provide callback numbers to those with whom he speaks. So Mike, who are you? And why the subterfuge? Now, late today, we found out that Ms. Fluck is now being repped by the progressive PR agency SKD Knickerbocker, where Anita Dunn, the former Obama communications director, is the managing editor. Aha! So this whole deal comes back to the White House, at least indirectly. So let's run down what we know. Sandra Fluck is the former head of the group Georgetown University Law Students for Reproductive Justice. On February 9th, a group called the Feminist Majority Foundation arranged for Sandra to appear at a press conference criticizing the Catholic bishops for objecting to President Obama's contraception mandate. After that, Congressman Elijah Cummings, the former chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, invited Sandra to testify in front of the House Oversight Committee. But she was turned down by the chair, Congressman Darrell Issa, because she had no expertise in the church-state subject matter. Nevertheless, Ms. Fluck went to the hearing and afterward complained to ABC News that she had been denied. A week later, Nancy Pelosi staged a mock hearing starring Sandra, after which Rush Limbaugh made derogatory comments, elevating her to left-wing martyrdom. So it seems there is a powerful presence behind Sandra Fluck. And as the polls show, the controversy has benefited the President of the United States, who is on the ropes with the church deal. This is all the more amazing because the controversy Sandra is embracing is completely bogus, as I explained on The View today. Do you guys know what Title 10 is? Do you know what Title 10 is?
Explain it.
You know what it? Okay. So it's in motion now that if you need birth control and you go to a federal clinic, you get it.
Yes.
That's under Title 10 of the Public Health Act.
Right.
All right. So there really isn't any problem. You can get it. And then if you don't want to drive down to the clinic, you can go to Walmart or you can go to Target and get it for $9 a month. So to insert this into a giant Obamacare bill seems to be unnecessary to me. And by the way, the ladies were respectful, and we had a very good and necessary discussion. Now, Talking Points believes that very quietly, President Obama will pull back on his demand that the Catholic Church cover contraception. He has snatched victory from the jaws of defeat and would be foolish to continue flogging an unconstitutional mandate. Mr. Obama knows the polls say many American women now believe he's protecting them. For that, he can thank Sandra Fluck and whoever is running her. And that's a memo. Now for the top story tonight, reaction. Join us from Washington, Fox News analyst.
Okay. So, let me go back to my list here. Hopefully you guys noticed, whoops, that's not what I wanted. Hopefully you guys noticed all of the value language in that report on the part of O'Reilly. He called the hearing a mock hearing, the one that the Democrats held for Fluke to testify in front of. He called that a mock hearing, right? So it's not a real one. They're just playing at being Congress people. He called it subterfuge, right? That's a conspiracy, you guys. And the majority of that report is about conspiracy theory mongering. He is trying to advance a conspiracy theory about who is running Sandra Fluke. Like there's some shadowy entity behind her and her bogus argument. And he uses the word bogus. All right. There are a couple moments where some of these issues get addressed. This one in particular, access to contraception, when he's on with The View, right? He attempts to address this, right? He says, there's really no problem. There's no need for it, right? And that was one of the questions I had, right? Is, do we need it, okay? Or can women easily get it themselves? He says yes. He says because of Title 10, all you need to do is go down to the federal clinic and get your free contraception. Or if you can't do that, you can go to Target or Walmart and get it for $10. Well, what he doesn't address is the fact that that $10 price tag is for people with health insurance. That's the copay, right? He also, in addition to Rush Limbaugh, don't seem to understand how female contraception works, right? It's not the same as it is for guys. And by the way, Rush Limbaugh, it doesn't matter how many times you have sex. It doesn't cost more for most women to if they're having more sex, it's not more expensive for them to contracept those moments of intercourse. All right, they don't seem to get that. But in addition to that, O'Reilly is wrong. Okay, O'Reilly is misleading his audience and the audience on that program of The View about the availability of contraception. I don't know if you guys know of any federal clinics in your area. I don't know of any federal clinics in my area where I can go get free contraception, right? And if I want to get it for $10 a month, then I need to have health insurance, and that's what this is about. This is about making sure people have insurance so that they're covered, so that this stuff is affordable. All right. So, I mean, O'Reilly's report was clearly biased, and I'm sure that comes as no surprise to anybody. But the idea is to notice the specific framing strategies that are being used in these clips. All right, and I would show you another one from the Ed Show, because they use framing strategies too, and they're pushing a political viewpoint, a liberal one. But I don't want to make this recording go any longer. It's gone on long enough, I think. Alrighty, and so I'm going to end it there, and hopefully that's clear. And if it isn't, you guys will write me and ask me specific questions. Alrighty, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and end this now, and I'll see you guys later.